Day 617 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is a super quick update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 302,000 military personnel losses, which represents a notable 930 additions in the past 24 hours. Then as for hardware losses, 18 tanks, 43 APVs, and a whopping and almost record-reaching 42 artillery systems, the record being 44. And just to note, those artillery systems are all pretty much exclusively Soviet-era platforms, such as the 152mm Mr. S or Jaitsin S SPGs, plus their towed artillery variants. And indeed, I like to take a keen focus on artillery pieces in this war because, put simply, they're quite the irreplaceable leg to knock out of the Russian army. Yes, it's true they can be reproduced, but the destruction pace far outweighs Russia's production pace or capability by a long shot. And so far as artillery platforms are concerned, the Russian army is living on borrowed time due to their dwindling artillery inventories, and there's been plenty of satellite imagery that shows that all types of Russian armor have had severe depletions of their stock. But more on this shortly in the video. Then we'll head into the Donbass north of the Ukrainian map today, as the Kupiansk direction continues to not be what the invading Russian force would have hoped for. And in this instance, a Russian armoured convoy was totally destroyed in the region. And so the way it happened could be considered to be a little bit more traditional in terms of warfare, as Ukrainian tanks precisely took out one Russian vehicle after another, and even the fleeing vehicles got destroyed as well. All in what seemed to be just another genuine case of Russian commanders allowing or commanding the attack without intel or artillery support even. Events like these really leave you scratching your head for the Russian forces. Then we'll head down on the map to Avdiivka. So, as it turns out, now, Russian forces apparently didn't bother to fully secure the flanks of their Avdiivka push, as Ukrainian forces, in an update, happened to penetrate nearly a kilometer south, going down the H20 highway right there, all into the Russian line outside of Krasnohorivka. Then heading to the south, the other main front line here, as over the past couple of days at Robotyne, the AFU has been making some gains to its west, and you can somewhat see that there. If I go back 1 and 2 days, you'll see that, quite the liberation push there on the west. In fact, even more recent than this was reports that the Russian front line has since collapsed on the west of Robotyne, and also that Russians had lost their dominant heights west of the village in the direction of Kupiansk. Now, we of course have to wait for more confirmations on that information, but hey, nonetheless, what we see right now, a push is a push, a liberation is a liberation. Then moving across to Kherson, as we saw the movement of Ukrainian troops near Krinky. Right, there we go, which is now on the increasingly disputed but Russian-occupied south bank of the Dnieper River. But perhaps the biggest news in the last day for this region was Russian telegram channels reporting that Ukraine launched a missile attack on the HQ command post of the Russian armed forces, which is also the very same HQ location of the newly appointed Russian commander, Teplinsky. And as you may remember, the former commander of the Kherson region, the Russian commander, was effectively fired just the other day due to not reporting on an accurate picture of the front lines on the Dnieper River. Now, the new commander, Teplinsky, has reportedly survived, although there were some mixed reports from Russian sources. At first, they said everybody's okay, Then later on, there were some Telegram updates to say everybody's still okay, but we're searching for anyone alive. But of course, it is the typical Russian go-to method: deny first and then sort of confirm later. Then on the map, but more generally for the past 24 hours. So, Ukraine reported the highest daily rate of Russian shelling this year for the past day, as it was reported that Russia shelled 118 Ukrainian settlements in the past 24 hours, which is a record for 2023 at least. Now, this is interesting for at least a couple of reasons. It firstly means that Russia got an artillery shell replenishment package, if you will, from North Korea. Some say 500,000 shells to 1,000,000 shells, or 2 months or 1 month supply. But secondly, the Russian army appears to have gone full tilt, once again, with indiscriminate artillery fire, which is exactly what got them into this severely restricted artillery stockpile situation in the first place. As it appears, Russia went completely back to their old and original military tactics and methodologies with no adjustments. But the thing is, if they were to continue at this rate, just like the old days, then within 9 or 10 days, the Russian artillerists could foreseeably be right back to where they started. Which takes me back to the start of this video, where the 42 destroyed Russian artillery systems in the past day really starts to add up and make sense, as Ukrainian counter-battery fire, which has significantly grown in its effectiveness as the time has gone by, appears to have located many of these systems for the takedown. And there will be limits to what North Korea can supply Russia on an ongoing basis. And take, for example, this latest transference of artillery shells from North Korea. It took since about 3 months ago, since back in August time, when they started to talk about this. Putin and Kim. So a good few months to get the ball rolling on that one. But I certainly like to think that even 100 million artillery shells isn't going to really make one iota of a difference, since Russia cannot sustain its artillery pieces' losses, as their military production capacity for these devices are just embarrassingly limited. Then we'll head across to some news for today. So starting off with some Ukrainian hardware news. So a Ukrainian FPV drone operator recently set a new record for the distance it took to take out a Russian tank. And that distance, 22 kilometers, or about 14 miles. Which is very impressive, as Ukrainian FPV drone warfare capabilities are increasing in technological advantage more and more. But it's not just the distance, as actual striking success rates for the drones from the AFU side have increased up to and sitting on currently 58% for one group as reported. But back to this increased distance capability for the Ukrainian FPV drone operators, this will start to have a larger impact on not just Russian tanks and infantry fighting vehicles, but also more Russian artillery and multiple launch rocket systems as well. Then in some other news, a Russian helicopter is said to have entered into Japanese airspace above Hokkaido, as reported by Japan's defense ministry. As a result, fighter jets from Japan's Air Force were dispatched in response. Now, Russia and Japan have been dealing with border disputes and hostilities for at least half a century, as Russia occupied the Kuril Islands in 1946 and never gave them back. Classic Russia, or Soviet Russia, right? Well, this most recent violation into Japanese airspace from Russia is clearly a message from Russia to say something like, hey, we're almost completely invested with everything we've got, militarily speaking, into Ukraine, but even still, don't try to take your islands back. So, flexing as best they can, as they cannot look weak to Japan, Ukraine, NATO, and even China. Then moving across to a quick funny to round it all off today, guys, and why not do a map-related funny for once? For instance, the Chinese government recently released a new official map for its own country, laying new claims to land in multiple regions adjacent to itself that it never laid claim to before. Well, one of those countries for China's newly updated 2023 map includes, you guessed it, Russia. With China now laying claim to the Ussuri Island in the Amur River. So, with Russia now so reliant on China due to international sanctions, it really puts Russia in quite the precarious position. And to give you some added context, back in 2005, there was a bilateral agreement between China and Russia confirming that this location was Russia's to keep. But in 2023, China arguably now sees a weakening Russia. So it's clearly looking to see how much it can get away with. And truly, China would make a land route all the way to the Arctic if it could. So what a friendship of convenience that these two are. Friends until it no longer suits. And when you look back through history at geopolitical conflicts in the past 150 years, it was unity amongst nations that always played a critical role that put a stop to authoritarian countries. And so, as for these two peas in a pod, oh, the karmic irony of it all. So that will be it for today, guys. Super quick video, like I've said there. But hey, thanks again for watching. Please still comment and like. And I do hope to see all of you guys there on the next one. Cheers.